Welcome to Fandom Shmandom, the fandom podcast that covers everything you love and more. I'm Sierra Obermark.
And I'm Aurelia Lieb. Because guess what? 2 brand new hosts for this Odyssey season.
Woohoo!
You missed us. I'm sure you did. Today's episode, we will be expeditiously exclaiming about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. It should be obvious, but a spoiler warning for both the Odyssey movie from Christopher Nolan and The Odyssey. But you know, it's been out for a hot minute, and we already covered it in episodes 1 to 3 of season 4 of this very podcast you're just listening to.
A hot minute. Thousands of years.
I love all the interviews that like people did, you know, like spoiler, and then they were like, yeah, it's been out for 3,000 years. Without further ado, we will, as Roger Smith says, dive on in.
Swallow that pill. It's our Matrix category for initial impressions of this brand new version of The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. Let's just start by saying that this movie is right up my alley. I was always planning on seeing it opening weekend, regardless of if we were covering it on the podcast. And the genres that are combined here are pretty much the majority of what I watch and enjoy and consume, both film, TV, book, etc. wise. So I anticipate from here on my review will be on the more positive side, just in general, by default. I have some negatives, but I'm not completely blind, but still, it'll be majority positive, I feel.
Whereas, this is not my type of movie at all. I don't think I would have seen it if Sam wasn't in Norway right now and I have to fill in for him, because peek behind the curtain, I guess. So I really I've seen it opening night for this podcast. But I don't think this automatically means that I didn't like this movie. So don't think that, you know, Sierra's coming in all positive and I'm coming in all negative. This is not what is going to happen. We just thought it was going to be helpful for all of you to know where we're coming from initially going into this movie. Mm-hmm. And I think our first point here is I think I walked out of the movie, and this is literally one of the first WhatsApp messages I sent to you, is this is like meant to be a spectacle. Like, you're meant to experience this in cinema. You're meant to like fully be immersed in this movie. And I think it's a bit of a show of what is possible if like the best of the best in terms of like filmmaking work together and produce like mind-blowingly good pictures. Just from like the images you get to see, it's spectacular. I think that's like the only word to put on it. And it's probably like the cinematography, I would argue, is almost so important to this film that the story is like not the most important thing that's happening. It's almost suffering a little bit for it because we care about the images so much.
I definitely agree about it being a spectacle, because there were so many moments where I was just sitting and in awe, trying to just take in every little bit of what I was seeing. And then I would realize, oh, they started talking. Oops. I'm not paying attention. And also I think one of the biggest like immersive parts of it is the sound, because I don't know about in your theater or how, you know, if you saw it in the IMAX, like big screen or anything. I saw it on an ultra screen, which is a slightly different, but still high quality. And the sound is still a Dolby Atmos sound, and the reverberations just in my chair while watching really was impactful. It almost gave close to like a 4D movie experience just from the sheer depth of the sound that's around you. So I really enjoyed that. And if you get a chance to see it in a big theater, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
Or if you have a really awesome home setup.
Yeah. I think you often hear this about movies when they promote them. It's like, you have to see it on a big screen. You have to see it on a big screen. And I don't feel like that's always true. Like, some of the movies, I'm like, yeah, it was perfectly fine to watch this at home. This one, if you have the opportunity to see it on a big screen, honestly, do it.
Do it.
And I know it is daunting because you look at the runtime and it's like almost 3 hours. Like when me and my friend booked tickets, I was like, well, we better make sure not to go pee because like it's a long movie.
Right.
But while we were watching it, I didn't feel like it felt like a 3 hour movie because I've been in 3 hour movies before. I've watched 3 hour movies at home and you were like, all right, yeah, we're still doing this movie. I didn't feel that way at all. Like it didn't feel unnecessarily dragged out. And I think the way that they tell the story with the jumps actually felt really smooth. Because again, I've seen plenty of movies where that didn't really work. Or it just felt a little bit more jarring. And I don't think this was the case here at all. But I think it was really well executed. And it was easy to follow because the friend I went with, she knew nothing about the story. She came in completely blank, basically, and she really enjoyed the film. And she was able to follow the story fine.
That's a really good review. If you can follow something with having no background information. I also felt like the story flowed really well. The timeline jumps to me felt really natural just to storytelling. And I don't know if that's because I'm an ADHD storyteller. And so half of my stories go, oh, I forgot to finish that part of the story. Let me go back. Or, oh, wait, hold on. You need context for this section. Let me just elaborate a little bit more. So that all felt really natural to me. And so it was a nice way to progress through the story. I also think that the timeline jumps helped with the storyline in general as well, because it spoke to kind of the larger theme of Odysseus forgiving himself and kind of coming to terms with the worst parts of what had happened and for his breaking of Zeus's law, and really accepting his actions throughout the whole film, and how he's, in certain parts he's remembering sections and then other things are being told to him and then you're experiencing it with him. But ultimately, the worst thing that happens in his mind and what has caused the entire journey is the last thing that we learn about, really. And so I think that that's a very interesting way to tell the story, and it makes sense thematically as well.
Yeah, the last thing I'm going to add here for my initial thoughts is it is still a modern retelling. Yes, they worked really hard to sets and costumes are really amazing, well done. People put a lot of work and effort into it. They filmed everything practical, and you can tell there's a lot of love that went into making this movie. But I think if you've listened to episodes 1 to 3, or if you've read Homer's Odyssey, you will realize when you see this that things in the story were changed to fit, I think, a more modern audience's expectations, because we all grew up now and we are used to stories and movies to work a certain way. So I think there's a little bit of things were simplified for people like my friend who knew nothing. So, for example, Zendaya, who plays Athena, always appears in her own form, so to speak. Whereas in the actual Odyssey, she almost always appears disguised as someone else. And that would have obviously been really difficult to follow for someone who has no idea. And so I get changes like that because I'm like, yeah, it ultimately doesn't detract from the story, and it makes it easier for people to understand what's going on. There's already so many characters. Could you imagine if then on top of that, there are even more characters? You'd be like, but this one is actually currently the other one.
Right. Well, and then you would even get Odysseus disguising himself multiple times as well. There's a lot of disguising. I think in general, most of the changes are for the better that were made in order to make the story more understandable, especially in a visual medium. Because if you're reading a story and it's just described, Athena's disguised, then you can picture that. But if you're just seeing a disguised person, how are you supposed to know? So I think in general, most of the changes were for the better. There were some things that I missed. We'll kind of get into a little bit more of the details later, but there were some things, especially, I think my biggest thing is I did miss the presence of the gods.
Yeah.
in general. We only see Athena if we do. Question mark.
Yeah.
I will get to that.
So yes, I think we're at a good time to move on into the main praise about the movie that both we have, and we're going to add some praise we found online from other people, just to like give you a full spectrum. It makes sense we start with our own experiences and what we really liked. It goes without saying, from based on what you just heard us talking about, I think the cinematography, absolutely no notes. It was stunning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can do it better than that. I enjoyed the editing and the way the story was unfolded. Interesting enough, some people actually would say that's their main critique. That isn't the case for me, honestly. I enjoyed it. And just the overall movie making skills, and are probably influenced by seeing interviews before I've seen the movie or even after the movie of actors talking about how this movie was made and how insane the level of it was. Like Matt Damon, I think, said, regardless like what day you pick on the Odyssey shoot, it was probably harder than any other hardest day he had on any other movie. Like any day on the Odyssey shoot was
That's incredible.
insanely hard. Like there were things where like they hiked up to Zeus's cave to film there, or like before the Phoenix. It was like, so your day starts with, well, I need to hike to the set first before we even start the filming, and stuff like that. And they did that for 2 weeks. So it's, I think that comes through, that like the effort that was put into this movie. And I found out yesterday before we recorded this, apparently it delivered under budget and finished early, which feels unheard of.
It feels absolutely insane.
Yeah.
You told me that, and my reaction was just, what?
Yeah. I was like, that movie?
Right. Well, I'm just thinking of other movies that I've heard that go way over their budget and they end up getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, or there's just issues with being able to actually get the film out. And the fact that they were able to get it out so on time that it was actually done early.
Yeah.
They didn't have to worry about pushing the date, and that they're under budget, which is crazy. Well, to be fair, they probably were budgeting for additional IMAX cameras, assuming that Nolan would actually end up breaking one, which he did not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they didn't say how much under budget, at least not in the interview I've seen.
$3.
But like the finishing early by 9 days. So that is, I think, significant for a project this size.
Yeah, I would say so.
I would summarize my review by saying this is probably the peak cinema, and it's probably going to be the peak cinema for a while. I don't think there's going to be another movie in 2 weeks that's like better, or even probably in 2 years, to be honest.
I've looked at the schedule coming up. That's until the end of 2027 at the very least.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Especially since a certain other movie got pushed back to 2028, but we won't talk about it. I definitely agree with you on all the praise for the movie making elements, the cinematography and the editing and everything that just went into the labor of creating the film. On top of all of that, I thought that the main cast did exceedingly well with what they were given, which in most cases was a really good quality product that they just made a lot better. There are some instances where maybe the script fell a little bit short or things were a little bit too confusing and the performance couldn't quite save it. But overall, I think the main cast was very believable and very interesting in the way that they were portrayed. And I thought especially a lot of the supporting cast, so not kind of the main tier, but the group slightly under, the Matt Damons and everybody, were really, really good. Himesh Patel in particular, I thought was obviously he's got a larger role than any of the other crew, but I thought he was definitely standout star of that ship. And just very, very well done all over the place. And I even thought that some of the, really minor characters who really just show up for a few moments were really interesting and really great. I thought that the way that they portrayed Agamemnon was
cool.
very interesting, very cool. So there's a lot, especially in the acting side of things, that I thought was also done very, very well.
My favorite actor was the dog. I was half jokingly,
cute.
he was so good. I think I've seen an interview with Tom Holland where he's like, so we shot the dog first and then I had to do my part, but everyone was in tears because the dog performed so well. And I had to follow that up.
Oh man, I have to go after the dog. Dang it.
Yeah, honestly.
Who would have thought? That's so funny. Another quality of the film that I thought was really well done was the sound. We've talked a lot about the visual elements, but the auditory elements were also very wonderful. At first, I had actually heard part of the soundtrack before seeing the film, and I was almost a little let down listening to the soundtrack by itself because I thought it was going to be a lot more kind of epic sounding and really aggressive and, motivational almost, in terms of like, we're going to battle, we're going on an adventure, we're going to war. But when it was mixed in with everything else, I found those moments really, really nice because you're seeing these beautiful landscapes or stark landscapes, and the music is this sweeping and almost gradual build. And it was haunting in places where I felt it needed to be haunting. I think especially the music that plays when they're in Ithaca is very calm and it's very beautiful, but there is a little bit of an eerie quality to it, almost like things are not quite as they should be here, which is true. So I felt that the storytelling through the music was also very well done.
I believe I've seen Nolan apparently gave Göransson, who did the soundtrack, the direction of don't use any string instruments, don't do the typical violins and stuff, and please strip it really, really back. And I honestly, I think he delivered. It works really well, but that is probably why if you listen to it in isolation, you'd be like, okay, this doesn't give me a lot because it's not meant to be. So yes, that's our praise. So I had a little bit of a look around the internet to see what other people say. And I think in general, most of this matches what we say. We all know the website to look at if you want to know how a movie does. And so, of course, we went to Rotten Tomatoes as well. And a lot of the praise, I've read through some of the comments from both the critics and just, normal people, focuses on the visuals and the experience of it all being shot on IMAX. And it has a 94% on the tomato meter, which is the critics, and a 97% on the popcorn meter. So I think those are some numbers that speak for themselves. And I pulled out two shorter reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. First one says, visually, the movie is stunning treat for the eyes with a huge range of outdoor sets and different lighting. We talked about that, honestly. It could also be a documentary at times. There weren't the pesky monsters and other things happening. And Odysseus killing pesky monsters. And yeah. And the other review from Rotten Tomatoes says, the constant wonder Nolan elicits in telling of this familiar tale very well could be his greatest achievement to date. So I think generally, if you look around the internet, you find a lot of praise. And then I wanted to add this one a little bit longer review. It is from an article called The Odyssey, explaining the last scene of Christopher Nolan's new epic. It's on IGN and written by Alex Zalben. And the whole article is really good, but this is towards the end, sort of his summary of what he thinks this movie means in our time today. And I saw quite a few other reviewers saying similar things. So I wanted to bring one that sort of gives you what people think this means in our day. What does a story that's 3,000 years old actually currently mean for us? So here goes. And that's what Nolan is getting at here. We are currently in the modern day of 2026, leading to our own inevitable destruction by breaking our own laws, spurning our own gods by fighting with each other. It's a theme that Nolan has embraced repeatedly, most recently with Oppenheimer, the film directly preceding this one, where the filmmaker attempted to show how our hubris in splitting the atom was both a scientific leap and also broke the world.
Yeah, definitely. And that really speaks to the modern elements that, this really is a retelling for a modern audience, and to have us take a look at current surroundings and kind of a warning almost of, those who do not know their own history are doomed to repeat it. So
yeah,
it's nice to be able to see this story that's, 3,000 years old still have some relevance and be able to be adapted in a way that doesn't lose its original meaning, but also is still relevant.
And I think some of the changes that made it more easy to follow for my friend, for example, where I remember in episodes 1 to 3 when Sam and Liz covered the Odyssey, they constantly be like referring to Zeus' law, but they used the actual Greek term. See, now I'm forgetting what it was. Listen to episodes 1 to 3. Whereas this movie constantly just said Zeus' law. So everyone can understand what that means. Everyone can be like, all right, that's the law of the people around here. That's what you're meant to do. That's what you're meant to follow. And so small changes like that make it easier for you to understand and how this relates to us. Because we all live in countries that have laws. We all have societal norms that we agreed on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're religious or not, there's still certain things that I would say most people agree on, maybe don't go and kill other people, for example. Stuff like that. where we all just know what is right and what is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is the praise section. So we worked hard to find some critiques. Actually, we didn't work that hard. So it's well deserved the high praises for this movie. It is obviously not without flaws. So here's a little bit of critique that we want to go into. I think my main one would be sort of going on from the point I said earlier, but this has been reshaped a little bit to fit modern audiences' expectations. So I think we all have been trained that the main person has to be likable. In most stories that we read or watch, we've all been sort of there's this expectations of you should like the main person. Now, if you read the Odyssey, you'd probably be like, yeah, Odysseus, maybe not that likable a person. Actually makes a lot of terrible decisions. Actually questionable if he actually likes anyone but himself. So, going into this, I expected that they would probably change that just because it doesn't fit the Hollywood mold at all to have the main person be so questionable. So they obviously don't change Odysseus around completely. He's not suddenly a flawless good person. That would be too extreme. But I still think he's a bit too likable. He's a bit too depicted as this nice guy. I don't know if you would agree.
No, I do agree. Especially in comparison to the original, where he's much more like a trickster who is kind of just out for doing what he wants to do in some cases and kind of saying, I'm not going to listen to you, to the gods, and all sorts of things like that. And really not necessarily, I mean, I would give an example in this film where he shoots the arrow at Polyphemus after the fact, after they've already left and they've escaped, and then he shoots the arrow. And his explanation is pretty lackluster as to, when questioned why he did that. Well, he killed our men. Yeah. and we blinded him and ran away, so I think that is really much closer to the original Odysseus, and for that to kind of not carry through too much to many of the other plot points is, yeah, it's a little bit of not a letdown, but I do think that it changes his character to be a little too nice.
Yeah.
My general main critiques lie in the story changes. Not that they were necessarily bad choices, but I would potentially have liked to see them done a little bit differently. One in particular, I didn't really care for Calypso's portrayal.
Mm-hmm.
I thought she didn't have enough agency. She didn't really have anything that was driving her. She just kind of fell in love with the washed up guy on the shore that she nursed back to health and has been taken care of, but didn't really seem like we didn't get to know her at all. We don't know anything about her backstory. We don't know how she got these lotus petals. We don't know why she decided to use them. We don't know how she got here. We have basically no information about her, and so she's just kind of there. And I wish that she had more of a personality and more of a drive to actually impact the story. And the other thing is, while I'm glad that we do see the lotuses themselves, I do wish that it was separate and that we actually got to see the lotus eaters.
Yeah.
Because that's such an interesting concept on its own that I didn't think that it needed to be combined with Calypso. I can see from a time perspective, because we're already at a 3-hour film. So
Yeah.
I can see from a time perspective, things needed to be cut. I get it. You can't have everything in there, but that is one thing that I do wish had a little bit of time at least.
Yeah, and I think talking about story changes, and I think this for me also plays back into my point about Odysseus being depicted more likable. And it is the main thing that you find people complaining about on the internet as well. It's like the polyphemus of it all. He was changed so much to be like beast-like. He's like depicted to just, be a dumb beast as much as that sounds weird to describe Polyphemus, but that's what you get in this movie. The men are shocked when it speaks. So subsequently, the whole nobody conversation is cut, which I think everyone's upset because it's such a well-known piece of the Odyssey and everyone sort of was looking forward to seeing it. And I just found yesterday the reason for why Nolan cut it. It was the translation of the pun wouldn't work. I was like, really?
I think you could have figured it out with your 9 days.
Yeah. Yeah, time. So the whole arrogance that Odysseus displays in the Odyssey about revealing his name when he doesn't have to, and then getting Poseidon curse him because Polyphemus asks his dad to curse Odysseus and his crew. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, this bothers me a lot. First, because as you said, nobody is such an iconic part of the story, but also by not revealing his name, Odysseus doesn't essentially curse himself. There's just kind of a general curse placed on the crew, which how would Poseidon know which crew, which people are the ones who Polyphemus has talked about? So it's very confusing in that way. Also, by making Polyphemus much more beast-like, everything they do to him seems that much more cruel. And it's almost like harming an animal or a child who's acting on instinct because he isn't shown as being intelligent enough that they need to trick him or they need to disguise themselves. In fact, the whole disguising thing kind of came out of nowhere because we don't even really see him brushing the tops of his sheep until they're leaving.
Yeah.
At least I didn't notice it ahead of time.
Don't think you did.
And so it was very weird, and they're counting how many sheep there are, and the whole thing was just a little odd. And at the very end of, them actually seeing him is when he's praying to Poseidon, and the line is, well, why didn't he speak before? And would you speak to ants?
Yeah.
And I thought that was just also odd because then it's almost making him seem hyper intelligent and them being the less intelligent species, which doesn't make sense at all from the entire portrayal up until that point. So I just felt very heartbroken for this Cyclops.
Yeah, and I think
it made me really sad.
Because they don't feel like they're on a level playing field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know he's a man-eating creature. I get that. But also, so are wolves. And I wouldn't want to see one blinded and attacked and had an arrow shot at either. So, yeah, it made me a little upset. Charybdis was underwhelming to me. I thought it was really just a tool to get the boat damaged enough to risk landing on the island with Apollo's cattle. And so it didn't really have any stakes in and of itself. It was really just more of a tool, which was kind of a shame. But I also, again, I kind of get it. But at the same time, if you're going to cut it down that much, could have just cut the whole thing out.
Yeah.
It could have just been Scylla who damages the ship.
Yeah.
And then leave the Charybdis out of it completely.
Also, I thought Charybdis looked underwhelming. Of a movie with such brilliant cinematography, I was like, well, this is Charybdis? Really? This?
It looked like it was about twice the size of the ship.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was expecting something maybe
a little bit bigger.
40 times the size of the ship.
Yeah. We will probably do a Patreon about this. Shameless plug. Go to our Patreon. But Sierra and I both love Percy Jackson, and the second book, and now subsequently the second season of the Percy Jackson TV show, has literally just
and
covered
also
this.
the lackluster second movie of
oh yeah, and we're not talking about that.
The original
that doesn't
movie.
exist. So literally earlier this year, in like January, there was another depiction of Charybdis and Scylla, because Percy basically goes on the Odyssey in the second movie / TV show, without too many spoilers. And I was like, why does this TV show that surely had less money to do this part better? And maybe that's a salty take, but I was like, I've just seen it better on TV.
I think it's a valid critique.
Yeah. My final part to add to our critique part is the ending too cheesy? Because it's very different to how the Homer's version of the Odyssey ends. Telemachus becomes king. Odysseus leaves the island with Penelope. So is that too happy ending Hollywood style? We needed this, or does it fit with the other changes?
I think that it fits. So this isn't a critique to me because I felt that it was a through line, and it was kind of in this version what keeps Odysseus going, which is I have to get to Penelope, basically. We need to be able to sail away into the West. I need to go and pay my respects to my men, and I want to do it with her by my side. And I also feel that it isn't quite a happy ending because Telemachus has spent this entire time waiting for his father to return. He's wanted to meet his father, know who his father is. He's went on this whole little mini odyssey to find his father or news of his father. And then when he finally meets him, he gets to be in his presence for, I'm assuming, a few days. a few days. He doesn't know that it's his dad until it's revealed with the dog. And then we don't exactly know how long it's been, enough that he's bandaged but not healed. So we know that it's not very much time that he gets to spend with him. So I think that there is enough of a not so happy part of that ending. It's not all three of them sailing off into the sunset, but I think that it fit with the rest of everything that was created, especially with Odysseus being much more of a faithful husband in this version. I think that it fits. Now, if we got this ending and he was the non-faithful version that we get in the original, that would be weird.
And once again, we look at what Rotten Tomatoes gives us. And the main critique I found in the comments, just looking through, is it's too long, it's too preachy, the storytelling and the acting is not as good as the visuals. I think some of that is down to just personal taste, and if people felt like that, then I'm obviously not saying that's not valid, that's their feelings. But I don't think that's what we felt. One of the quotes I found on Rotten Tomatoes was, I think it's quite typical for that to happen for something that is so hyped. That person was saying, I was just expecting more with all the hype and the ratings. That can happen. You you go in with such high expectations that they're not meetable almost, like it's just not possible.
Right. In order to kind of please everyone, I mean, and that's impossible, but in order to, try to live up to people's really, really, really high expectations sometimes, you would have to have, a 6-hour movie that covers every little detail and all of these beautiful visual representations, and then have this cast who's, I think already acting their hearts out, but it would have to even be pushed farther, and there would have to be more drama. But then you would get people complaining that it's a 6-hour movie. So.
People are already complaining about the 3-hour movie. So.
Exactly. So there's no real winning in terms of that, because unfortunately it happens. You want to hype your movie up and you want to promote it and you want it to have the best chance, but that does lead to over expectations as well.
Yeah, with something like the Odyssey, most people will go in with certain expectations because it's a story that's been around for 3,000 years. Most people, even if they haven't read it, know some of it because it's just still referenced quite a lot in our in today's culture. People will know some part of it. So people will go in and, for example, expect polyphemus and then nobody seeing it. And guess what? That didn't happen.
Yeah.
So people will, even with the lowest of expectations, probably still have certain expectations just because of what the movie is about. And another one from Rotten Tomatoes, which I think was quite a typical critique I found there. I wanted to bring it. Impressive in its portrayal of ancient Greece, with a demanding performance and an all-star cast. But this exhausting epic is weighed down by its nearly 3-hour running time. I think that was quite a typical one where people were like, everything was great, but it was too long.
Which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
I thought it felt fine. I agree with your original assessment that it did not feel like it was 3 hours long.
No.
There was only one point where I went, oh, are we getting close to the end? Oh, no, we're not. Okay. And that was it. And then I was perfectly happy to continue watching the rest.
But also, I think it helps when you know how much of story it has to cover. So if we just finished Polyphemus, then I, as the person who knew about the story, knew, well, we're still having to do Charybdis and Scylla, we still have to do Circe, we still have to do the cow, we still have to do Calypso. You sort of know how much more there has to happen. It's an Odyssey. It took him quite a while to get back home. A little bit.
Just a little bit of time.
Yeah, just a tiny little bit. From the same article, I read the sort of conclusion earlier in our praise section. I thought Alex Selbin, the author, had a really valid point here that I'm going to add as sort of the critique part of how they are telling the story. While Odysseus and his second-in-command, Eurylochus, present themselves as friendly allies, there are gaps in the story. Why are they still sacking that village? Why does the witch Circe think Odysseus' men are nothing but pigs? There's an underlying sense of not all men running through the movie where we're supposed to identify Odysseus' crew as heroes, but perhaps they are not nearly as heroic as they purport themselves to be. And I think that sort of is going back to what I'm sort of saying. They're trying to make everyone a little bit more likable, but it doesn't work really. They're not actually meant to be likable.
I agree, because when they are, sacking the village, and there's other instances in the original where they are having to kind of pillage their way along the coast because of all of the issues they're having with being able to actually sail and get back. and be a working ship enough to be away from land, that they really are, they are the people from the sea that word is spreading about. And all these people are so fearful, and it turns out to be them. And I think that is mentioned enough that you understand that it really is them that are causing all this fear to spread throughout Greece. But we don't focus on it enough that it is clear before Penelope says, "You are the people from the sea."
Yeah.
So it kind of has to be spelled out. And I feel that there was a missed element of show, don't tell.
Yeah.
That could have been added in, but that would have made most of our main characters more unlikable, which I'm sure they were trying to steer away from. But I don't necessarily know that it would have been a detriment to the film if they had made them slightly more unlikable.
Yeah, I remember sitting there when the Cersei scene unfolds, and she's like, "Well, look at them; they're just like pigs." I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, they were not
Are they, though?
great though thus far, but arguably Odysseus was the problem, and the men weren't so much."
Yeah, that whole scene did feel very extreme to me, or at least Cersei's reaction feels very extreme. She immediately freaks out, and then, when Odysseus is kind of questioning her about what happened, where are his men and everything, she's just like, "Well, they came in and they attacked me." And he goes, "Did they attack you?" "Well, no, but they would have." What?
Yeah.
What do you mean they would have? "Well, they wanted all of my food, but you offered it to them."
And I think because we only get one scene where they come up to this village, and the village basically sets themselves on fire because they're like, "Well, we're scared of you. You're just gonna do this anyway." We don't have that reference for like, well, Cersei has a point. They have already done this 20 times. But because we don't actually see it really once, we're like, but they didn't. So this feels, it's
right.
Like,
and how would Cersei have this knowledge?
Yeah.
That men are coming to the shore to even be a threat. So it did feel like there was a little bit of story missing.
Yeah. Keep your finger on the pause button and rewind that tape. It's the prestige category. What did we notice on this watch through?
So I wanted to start off by taking a little bit of time to call out some of the visual and auditory choices. Obviously, we've talked in general about them, but there were some specifics that I really quite enjoyed and I thought were very interesting. We're seeing Odysseus's reaction to the siren song, and we also see William Lee's character's reaction, and he throws himself into the sea. He's tried, to be held back, and then he ends up making it. And I think that it was a very good choice to have that be so quiet and so deadened sound, because it just makes for a really interesting contrast to some of the louder sections of the film. And also, as a side note, Himesh Patel, just especially in this sequence, does an amazing job of just these very subtle facial reactions to everything that's going on around him. And he's just really focused in and studying Odysseus, which I thought was very quite interesting to focus on.
I also think it just fits the movie better, because it would have been so jarring to suddenly have a song. It would have just not fit the vibe of the movie. So I think it was the right choice to make for the movie that Nolan was clearly trying to make.
Agreed. Something that was not the right choice, at least in our minds, was the sequence of the men turning into pigs, because that was just gruesome body horror that I did not need. And I knew it was coming, and I still was not fully prepared for it. And it would have been better if they were turned into guinea pigs. Guinea pig supremacy.
Listen to our Patreon about Percy Jackson. and Odysseus.
Hades, however, was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the stark landscape, in contrast to the sea, in contrast to the warmer feeling of Ithaca, the eerie quality of the people rising from the ground, all of that really contributed to it feeling very otherworldly.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yay for practical effects, because the people rising out of the ground was a practical effect. They had them down there with snorkels and timers and safety people and everything, which is amazing. And I love that so much.
The scene that probably doesn't stand out to you as a viewer as dangerous is probably one of the most dangerous scenes they filmed.
Right. On a contrasting note, the storm that leads to the last of the men dying was so overwhelming, both visually and auditorily, because you can feel the strength of the weather, the gods, whatever it is, against these men. They can't even really call out to each other properly or say goodbye because everything is so loud. It is so chaotic. It is these flashes of lightning just blinding you, blinding them. And it really felt like you were there in the storm. This is another one of those moments that I think really benefits from seeing it in a large format theater, where you can actually feel the storm of the sound and you see it and just blinding flashes and everything. And where did that person go? Did someone just get tossed overboard? What just happened? It's all very confusing and chaotic in a good way, because it's exactly how they're feeling. The last auditory thing for me was the choice to have the lyre string for the plucking of the bowstring. I thought it was genius. I got chills every single time that Odysseus plucks his bowstring and the lyre sound appears, especially the final one, right before he does the trial that Penelope has set, because it's just such a moment where you hear that and everybody knows exactly who this is now.
Yeah, everyone's aware.
And it changes everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes sort of the sound that he's associated with. That one pling. Yeah. Just to add 2 more things to your list, and I agree with everything you said so far. Showing Agamemnon only in armor until his very end was such a joy, because it shows him almost as like superior godlike figure. He looks so huge in that armor. And then he dies in his bed, killed by his wife.
Like a regular man.
Yep. It was just well executed, I thought. Like every time I thought Agamemnon appeared, I was like, what does this person actually look like? I know he's brothers to the character that John Bernthal plays, but like we don't ever see his face until the end. So
right. Yeah, it was definitely a really great choice, because we get to see more of the myth of Agamemnon instead of the man of Agamemnon. And I thought that was great, because he really is more of a driving force of the story. He's the one who has spurred them to Troy. He is the one who basically starts all of this and creates the conditions for the rest of the events of the next 20 years to take place.
Yeah.
And so having him be almost untouchable was great, until he is completely vulnerable. And in that one moment of vulnerability,
the moment that he thinks himself he should be celebrated.
Exactly.
No, that was just well done. And lastly, Odysseus' dog. Every scene, beautiful and heartbreaking. I think the 2 words I would use to describe it. It's just, I understand fully why Tom Holland was stressing about following that performance.
Yes, definitely. I cried.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raging and raging at the beginning when they're kicking him.
Yes.
And I was so furious. And then, he gets placed outside, and it's so sad every time you see him. And then finally, Odysseus is there. He's wagging his tail, and then he dies, and I just lost it.
Oh.
What a good.
Yes. We already talked about how the story was amended to fit modern expectations, and we've already covered moments like Polyphemus. We won't repeat ourselves. There's a few other things we just want to add to this list of moments that we think were changed to make Odysseus more likable. This is a moment that Sam and Liz called out in their coverage in episodes 1, 2, and 3. Odysseus in the epic poem doesn't actually tell his men that these are Apollo's cows and they shouldn't touch them. And I remember Sam and Liz being like, why would you do this? If you were a good leader, you would tell them. So in this movie, he does tell them. And he tells them, don't eat them, don't touch them. These are Apollo's cows.
Yeah. Actually, I liked this change a lot. Even though it does paint him as a better leader, I think that it, first of all, makes more sense. But then also, it's less about the men being disrespectful or unknowing, and more about them being so desperate.
Yeah.
And it's one of the only times in the film that I really felt like the gods were there or were acting against them, because they aren't able to leave until they've eaten this cow.
Yeah. That's
so
right.
The winds finally change. They've been trapped on this island. They can't go anywhere. The cows are just taunting them, and they cannot leave until as soon as they eat that cow. Then suddenly the winds have stopped and they are able to leave, and it forces them to doom themselves, essentially. Did you think that if you ate quietly, the sun god wouldn't notice? No, we thought you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So it really makes it more about the men's desperation, and they don't feel like they're ever getting off this island at this point, and they would rather die out on the sea than die of starvation.
Yeah.
It was a horrible choice to make.
I agree. I like this change, but it is quite different to what we know in Homer's version. We already touched upon this other part here of how the story ends differently, but I think we need to just, it's still towards the end, but we haven't really talked about how Odysseus returns and gets rid of the suitors, because that was changed as well.
Yes, in the epic, not only does Odysseus fight the suitors, but also Telemachus has a larger hand in it, and it's much more brutal, not only for the suitors, but also for the slave girls who have been sleeping with the suitors as well, which, potentially not really their choice, but it is what it is. And they, end up killing all of the girls as well in a very brutal fashion that I honestly just cannot see Tom Holland and Matt Damon doing. Yeah. So it was a good decision to change that part of the story. But I did feel that it makes Telemachus weaker. If you're going to end the story with Telemachus being king, the fact that he's so bound by Zeus's law the entire time, even in this final fight against the suitors, when presumably anyone who's still remaining isn't going to say anything about it, and anybody who would have said something or tried to exile Telemachus is dead. So I thought that he should have had more of a role in the fight. I like that he got a little bit of a moment, but I did wish that he had more going on.
Yeah.
And was able to show his prowess, because he had mentoring him for who knows how long. And, we're not able to really see the fruits of his labor there.
Yeah, that is some of the changes they've made that we just wanted to talk to you about. All of that said, we still deal with Odysseus's questionable at best leadership skills. So even though changes were made, he still isn't exactly a good leader. And there is a moment where his men are basically like, nope, you are not coming with us because we don't like how you handle things.
Mm-hmm.
He also much more openly, at least I felt, reflects on his shortcomings towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was the same case in Homer's version.
No, and I think that it's a good thing that he's for this modern retelling.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense because the theme is a lot more about his grief and guilt over the choices that he's made, and so the fact that he has some reflection is nice, and he's not just continuing on as if everything is normal.
Yeah. The last part to add to this section is the Sinan and Antinius backstory or additional pieces that we learn. Sinan is not actually a character in the Odyssey, but is still a character that we know from Homer, just in a different story. So it's not a Nolan invention or at all. And I think it is needed addition to the story. We need to have these additional details. That we need to bring them to life, those characters, basically.
Yeah, I think especially to inform what we know about Antinius, because so the story of Sinan and Antinius is a little bit confusing. It took us a few kind of back and forths to really figure out what had actually happened. So just briefly, Sinan and Antinius draw lots for the draft. So Sinan picks one to stay home, and Antinius picks one to go fight and to go to Troy. But Antinius doesn't want to go. So he tells Sinan that if they swap, then he'll take care of Sinan's family and everything will be okay. And, you go off and you get glory, and then you'll come back and your whole family will be there and be set waiting for you. Odysseus sees all of this happen, lets it slide, presumably because he thinks that Antinius is going to take care of Sinan's family and that they've kind of made this deal. It's okay. Odysseus takes it upon himself as well to kind of cover the situation by lying to Antinius's dad, saying that, oh, your son wanted to take Sinan's place, but Sinan wouldn't let him. So, the dad isn't going to be ashamed that his son's basically a coward and doesn't want to go to war. Antinius, however, essentially immediately reneges on the deal. He doesn't give Sinan's family any support or anything, and they die as beggars with absolutely nothing, starved. Really. So I think this whole plot section really goes a long way to highlight just how skeezy and terrible Antinius is. And he's kind of the main suitor out of all of these dozens of suitors sitting trying to take Penelope's hand. And so he's kind of the example that we're going with of, okay, well, if this is arguably what they think is the best chance for a suitor for Penelope, how terrible are the rest of these guys?
Yeah. And I think also Antinius tries to spin the story later in life.
Yes.
When he tries to convince Penelope that he is the right choice, because he's like, I wanted to go with your husband, but he wouldn't let me. He wanted me to look after you. But like, he spins this whole thing where it's like, I was going to be brave, but I wasn't allowed to. So my job now is to look after all of you, and you're not letting me. So like, that's like his whole take on really trying to advance his like own position.
As Gandalf says, questions that need answering. Really, there are some minor questions that we had throughout, but I think the biggest one for me was, are the gods actually real in this version of Odysseus, or of Odysseus' story? Because Athena can almost be chalked up to a hallucination due to guilt and grief and regret over what he has done and what he has witnessed. You could almost say that Athena doesn't actually exist, and it's just a figment of his imagination. Also, we don't see any of the other gods in physical form. We only get weather and monsters, essentially. So there's a potential that the gods don't exist. There's also a potential that the gods do exist, but they've essentially abandoned this world to the monsters and to let the humans just fend for themselves. So I think it's it's something we won't probably get an official answer on, but it's an interesting pondering.
Yeah. No, we only get them named. We have Zeus's name every 10 minutes, it feels like. Zeus's law. And we hear about Poseidon, we hear about Apollo. Hermes doesn't actually appear.
But we don't even get Apollo's name, though. It's just the sun god.
Yeah, true. Which could be Helios.
Which it could be.
Yeah, interesting. Very different to the Percy Jackson version of all of this. Listen to our Patreon.
Time to keep your horses safe. It's the I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse category of best lines. Forgive us if we get any of these wrong. We did only see the movie once.
Yes. There's this moment between Odysseus and Athena where Odysseus asks, "Why can't God speak in ways we understand?" And Athena answers, "Who doesn't understand thunder, fire, a child's smile, a good harvest?" We have this moment between Sinon and Odysseus where Sinon says, "If I ever make it home, take this back to my father. Tell him everything I did." Odysseus, feel free to add some stuff. Just a fun little moment, and makes
our whole theater laugh.
Yeah, because it's like such a I don't think Sinon gets good moments. Sinon's just tragic, gets to die at the right point in time, sort of thing. So this is a much needed moment of levity for Sinon.
Penelope's sentiment. I've been sitting on that empty throne for 20 years.
I actually like the changes they made to Penelope.
I thought she was a lot stronger of a character. I did.
Yeah, but I think that's one of my major annoyances with old-timey stuff, to use a very technical term. That women are always like sideline pieces and have nothing to do and nothing to say, and I'm like, this is going to be about men and being so brave. Anyway, so I like that Penelope got a little bit more. Got a little bit more oomph to her character, basically, and actually also puts Telemachus a little bit in line when he's like, "I should just take the throne." And she's like, "No, based on what?" We have this moment after Odysseus's questionable choices where his crew starts to be like, we don't like this. So Odysseus asks, "Is this a mutiny? Do Eurylochus this?" It's up to you. That was a good moment. And another sort of moment of a little bit of levity that we needed is Antinous is demanding that Telemachus gets killed, and he says to his men, "Bring me part of Telemachus as proof. His nose." And then Iris, who's the character he's talking to, says, "Would you know him only by his nose?" So I was like, I literally, just before he said that, I was like, "Would you recognize him by his nose?" Like, that was literally what I was thinking, so I was like, okay. And then Antinous sort of like thinks, and is like, "His ears too." So I'm like, does that really help? Just get the head.
I don't know. Nose, ears, that sounds like all the parts you need. Totally recognizable. When Odysseus is speaking about Agamemnon sacrificing his daughter, the power of the sacrifice is in the cost of the person making it. I thought was very interesting because especially in this moment, Agamemnon's really not the person making the sacrifice.
Nope.
Boy.
He uses a similar line towards Sinon, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I get that this is your whole thing, Odysseus, but I don't know if Sinon is really comforted by this.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You had to die. It really helped me. Okay. We have this whole scene that we both really enjoyed about the sirens, and Eurylochus asks, "What was the song of the sirens like?" And Odysseus responds, "All the things you wanted to be, and then all the things you wished you never wished for. It was a delicious itch you wanted to scratch, but you find it under the skin and can't reach it. So the delicious itch becomes unbearable. It told you what you most want is what you most can't have, and that the most you can't have is what you already had and lost. It was a song of all promises I failed to keep, and it told me I don't really want to go home."
I don't want to hear that song. I'm good.
No.
But more about songs. Songs will be all they have to remember those of us who could write, which is kind of a fourth wall break at the very end that I really enjoyed because it's true.
Yeah.
Those who could write, the only way that they ended up being remembered eventually was through songs and oral history.
Yeah. It goes back to that other famous quote you often hear, like, history is told by the winners.
Mm-hmm.
Dust off that card deck and get ready to shuffle. It's our Joker category. Who is the MVP? I found this quite difficult. I know this is often the case when we do our episodes, but I thought this one was in particularly quite difficult. And sort of my initial thought was like, maybe Athena, because Odysseus would not actually make it to the end without Athena.
But that's if you believe that Athena is not just a figment of his imagination.
so there's that. So I was like, maybe Athena doesn't really work. So my pitch is Penelope, because she keeps the suitors at bay, and even Telemachus in line. So without her doing that, there's nothing for Odysseus to come back to, really. And she, ensures the throne remains empty and keeps a cool head about the whole really tricky situation that, Telemachus is really not keeping a cool head at all.
He's trying.
He's young, I
He's
guess.
trying. So Telemachus was actually my pick. And my reasoning was he really does his best to keep a cool head, but he's being consistently provoked, or you would have to imagine most of the last 20 years. He's being he's basically grown up just being provoked to violence constantly so that they can have an excuse to get rid of him. So he's under attack all the time, but he's still alive. He hasn't done anything 100% detrimental to where he has died or someone has been able to take the throne from him or his father. He makes his own mini Odyssey to find his father or news of his father. He learns a lot about what it means to kind of be a man and a ruling man and to be in charge and what kind of not to do and the foibles that these, men who went off to battle ended up coming back to and the problems that occurred. He ends up getting to help his father fight alongside him or above him, I suppose. And he saves those that he can in a very kind manner. I mean, he is very caring of all of the beggars who come in. He's very caring of John Leguizamo's character, who I'm blanking again on the name of, but the goat herder.
Yeah.
And he's really just focused on trying to get to the end, and he sits on the throne at the end. So I feel like, in general,
I feel like the movie agrees with your pick.
The movie agrees with me.
Because that's the end that the movie gives us, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe it's the dog.
mean, Penelope is a good pick, too, because Penelope gets what she wants as well, which is Odysseus.
Yeah.
She doesn't want anything else. She just wants her husband to come back. And she gets it, but I don't know that she, besides fending off the suitors and setting up the trial that really only Odysseus can win, she doesn't necessarily have as much action, but Telemachus also doesn't really either.
No, and I mean, it is touched upon, the weaving thing, where she's like, when I finish with this, this is when I remarry, and obviously she weaves backwards, basically. And then there's the scene where she puts Telemachus in line, which I think is needed. But yeah, I mean, she gets more action than she does in Homer's version.
This is very true.
But it's interesting that for a movie about Odysseus and his trip, we both picked two characters that weren't with him to be the MVP.
Well, I mean, everybody else dies.
Well, true. And Odysseus is really not an MVP.
And he's not. He loses a lot constantly all the time and then is exiled.
Yeah. And makes terrible choices along the way.
So who do we think is the ultimate winner?
The dog.
The dog.
It's the
Out
only
of left field,
compromise I'm
pound
willing
for
to
pound
make.
argument. Pound for pound argument. The dog,
Yeah.
who literally just lays there.
But he does so beautifully.
He does. He does. But he lays there.
I think it can be a tie, to be honest. I think the movie would agree with both of us.
I think so. The people who keep home ready and waiting for Odysseus. Today's public service announcement. When explicitly warned not to eat certain cows, make sure to tell your friends and have a secondary source of food available. Maybe you don't even land on an island where the only thing is sacred cows. Maybe just follow the rest of the group home after the war. Or maybe don't follow Agamemnon places in the first place. Thank you, dear schmisteners, for listening to this episode of Fandom Shmandom. If you'd like to discuss this episode or any other episode we've done, please hit us up on our social media channels. You can find us on TikTok and Instagram at Fandom Shmandom Pod. We have a Substack, which you can find under Fandom Shmandom, and we're on Patreon at patreon.com/CW/Fandom
Please don't forget to rate and review us if you liked the episode. It really helps the algorithm place us in front of other like-minded schmisteners out there. And with that, we're out, y'all.
Don't forget to tip all of the dogs.
And fare thee well.
Fandom Shmandom was created by Sam Williams and Sierra Obermark. The show is produced and edited by Aurelia Lieb. The music is by Jeremiah Alves.
And today's episode, we will be oh God, I didn't realize you wrote me something. How do I say that?
Expeditiously.
Expeditiously, okay, I'll try that again.
Because... Sorry.
Because Sierra is instantly punished by the gods.
How dare I doubt their existence?